I'm back! I was in South Africa, now I'm back. Back to this podcast, very excited. This week we talked about some fun questions at the beginning, and then I talked about what my experience was like being a minister in South Africa.
And that kind of dovetailed into us talking about the ministry and what it's like to kind of leave ego aside while you're giving a sermon. And I related that a lot to like my acting life and artistic life.
Yeah, we talked about how, ego doesn't always take the form of arrogance. Being self-deprecating or not sure of yourself actually can stem from selfishness as well.
Yeah, so if you want to be a better person, keep watching, keep listening.
Welcome to the Spiritable podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Luke. Basically, we started this podcast as a place to bring spirituality down to earth. For a whole myriad of reasons, talking about your faith, belief, religion, it's kind of a minefield, but we don't always think that's the best barrier to keep up. So personally, we're coming at this from a perspective of Christianity with a little bit of a twist, and you can check out episode 9 for more on that.
What we like to do is bring on guests with a whole variety of different spiritual backgrounds to help challenge our own beliefs, and hopefully to learn something together about how to be useful people. So thanks for joining us on Spiritable.
Okay, we feel settled, we feel ready to begin. Here we go.
You put Richard and I in the same room, and it's never going to be good.
What are we going to do? All right, we're jumping into it here. We have Ben, we got Richard, the brothers coming together. And on this episode, we're going to talk... I don't need to say what we're going to talk about. So, let me.
That's a brilliant intro.
We're going to hard cut. You just got to start somewhere and leave your ego at the door.
True.
Do you want to do the intro, Richard?
I was about to say.
Hi, guys! That's my classic intro.
You didn't get enough smirk today.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
I feel like that's what you do. I probably
Hey.
All right, hold on. Let's just clear some. Remember, if you're watching this video, we also have the audio version wherever you find podcasts. And if you're just listening to the audio version, we have a cool video version on YouTube where you can see Richard's beautiful face. Because he's looking great in the camera today, let's be honest.
So,
look at that ring. Oh, shoot. Bling, bling, ring. So we're going to jump right into it with some hot questions here to get us warmed up to the spiritual discussion. First question, are we ready, Richard?
Oh, I'm ready.
Are we ready, Ben?
I'm so ready.
Is Elon Musk the second coming?
No. Solid no.
Dude, that happened like 250 years ago.
Heyo.
He could be 250 years old. Let's be honest. If anyone is 250 years old, it could be Elon Musk. If we can suspend the disbelief for a little bit of time, we had to pick someone, it could be Elon Musk.
Isn't Elon Musk been up to some shady stuff and gotten suspended from his company and stuff?
Is that true?
Wasn't that a thing that happened?
He treats his workers like garbage. That doesn't feel very...
He's just too...
No, didn't he have some
The second coming.
something to do with... I don't know. I feel like he got suspended from his company for 6 months because he changed... I don't know. I don't know about it well enough.
I mostly was just you always have these hot questions, and I'm like, I feel uncomfortable about this question. People are going to be offended by this, Luke.
PC culture over here, this guy.
Just say it.
All right, next question. You die tomorrow. What happens to you, in specific?
Straight to hell.
You think?
No.
Do you think if legitimately, if you died, you would go to hell?
Oh, that's a question I think about all the time,
I don't
honestly.
think so. Yeah. No. But I feel like I'm pretty natural right now. I'm natural and a half. I'm halfway to the spiritual right now.
Yeah, I feel that.
I'm working on it.
I'm worried that if I died right now, I would not go to the best heavenly community that I could have achieved if I lived longer.
I kind of feel like I got...
That's regeneration, yeah.
Yeah, that's straight up. I
kind of feel like, for me, it really depends on the day. Some days I'm like, you know what? I try real hard to be a good person every day. That's so cool. And then I'm like, oh, I'm trying really hard because I am a garbage human that only cares about himself. I was just talking to, actually, your brother-in-law the other day and talking about how he has a conversation style where he's immediately interested in whatever the person that he's talking to is interested in. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's the most selfless communication. And I really struggle with that. I'm like, I don't have anything to contribute. I'm not talking. Yeah. Why are we still having this conversation?
It's a good thing you're not a host of a spiritual talk show or anything like that.
Cool, yeah, I'll see you later.
That person who's unnamed is kind of a celestial person, though.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
You know what I mean?
He's a good dude.
Also, his children. Oh, so cute.
Yeah, very cute. Oh. Anyway, so, Ben, you think you're halfway to spiritual? Richard?
Yeah.
Where are you falling in the heavenly realm?
I think I'm a very natural person still. Yeah. I make an effort, but I think I'm hyper natural.
I'm the most worried about is actually the fact that all of the good things I do, we have a community where it's sort of like naturally rewards you for being a decent person. And I'm like, you remove all that though? Who am I really? You know, like, it's nice to have all of these things. It's nice, and that's perfectly acceptable. That's part of the system.
Yeah.
But it definitely is like scary when you're like, how selfish am I really? It's pretty selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, if no one was around to watch, oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you behave?
I am realizing recently, my wife's family is big into this like personality typing called Enneagrams. And I personality type myself, and the personality type that I fell into, their like biggest fear is being unloved or seen as incompetent. And the more I think about that, the more I'm like, every single thing I do is just to prove that I'm lovable and competent. Like the other day I had a misunderstanding with someone in town. They thought that, anyway, it's a long story, but they had to send me a text to be like, hey, I didn't think that your behavior was super acceptable. But it was like from a misunderstanding.
Interesting.
And I got the text and my stomach sank. And for like 2 days afterward, I was like, there's someone out there that doesn't like me.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh, they think I'm not good. Oh boy.
There's a solid meme of the dominoes, and the first one, the smallest one, being like someone slightly using a different tone with me, crumples to the big one of full emotional breakdown.
Yeah. That's very much how I feel.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, I mean, I feel like every day I just realize more things that I'm just like, oh, Luke, you gotta do better at this. Like, there's so much to improve. Like, so I feel like if I died, I would go to a lower sort of heaven. Oh, I think we should probably describe the quick three heavenly motto in the new church.
Well, I mean, first of all, obviously we'd all go to the world of spirits and probably chill there for like 1,000,000 years while we become not garbage.
Yeah, that's true.
Hopefully.
Funnel all the garbage out. World of Spirits is a cool place you go to when you immediately die, where you get to sort out who you are and take some time to like realize you're in the afterlife.
Love, etc. Yeah. We're all
talked about that
fully
before,
grown adults. Yeah. So like, what do you actually love the most?
But then we have we sort of see heaven as in three kind of layers. One is the natural heaven, which is people who are more naturally good, like to follow orders and just do what they're told and like ascribe to a set of structures. Spiritual heaven, which is more, I always see it more academic, like loving truth for truth's sake and doing that. And then the celestial heaven, which is kind of loving good for good's sake, but in I don't know, celestial heaven always kind of eludes me.
Yeah,
But
I think it's better than anyone I
couldn't comprehend.
could possibly understand.
Yeah, and I mean, spiritual heaven isn't. Yeah, I mean, they definitely are truth-oriented people, but it's also, I mean, really a love of the neighbor. So I mean, it is love. I mean, if you're in heaven, you love people, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of like you have to.
But you don't
That's
have
like
to
a
be
basis.
an extrovert to go to heaven.
Oh, you know what?
Right.
You know what I've been thinking about recently? I ran across teaching that I've come across before, but hit me in a new way that talks about like how loving other people because of their connection to you is like an extension of loving yourself and just like being selfish. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, kind of read it and it hit me in a new way. And I'm like, do I love strangers? Like, do I love people I don't know? Like, do I love people that I have no connection to? Mm-hmm. Or do I only love people because I care about them and because they make my life better? And I was like, no.
It's so hard to separate that though, because like when you just see someone walking on the street, you would know nothing about them, so it's hard to love just a face without anything behind it.
Yeah, I guess the idea.
And
is
you can
you're
theoretically
supposed to-
say that.
You're supposed to love the good in someone, right? That's who the neighbor is. And so it's a distinction between, are you loving the good in someone or are you loving you in them, right? Like, oh, now they are part of my community. They make my community more full. And it's a very me-centered thing, right? Like, oh, yeah, my friend. You know, I like hanging out with them. They bring me joy.
But also,
not really thinking about
I think strangers all have innate worth because everyone has good in them. Walking down the street, any random person I should be able to say, like, I love that person just for being a person, for being a person that God made to do good things. And I don't. I don't know if I really care about strangers.
I think it's unrealistic to have that same depth of emotion for just a face and someone you have connected to.
I don't necessarily mean with like any sort of depth, but like
smile at them or say, "I love that coat." Like you could totally make someone's day. Like,
like go up to them, hands on shoulders, eye contact, unblinking. I love you. Really goes a long way.
Yeah. Maybe a nice kiss on the forehead. The forehead kiss is a very intimate kiss.
No, not even a forehead kiss, just a forehead touch. Just you and me.
Butterfly kisses to strangers.
That's a
you are worthy of love.
I feel like the forehead kiss is like a real like dominating kiss. You're like, I am in charge of you. Kiss. Okay. You know?
Let's step on back. I'm going to be the mature adult in the room and say, let's move away from kissing strangers and move back into love.
How dare you?
Yeah. No, that's smart. Okay, next one. Is Earth necessary for religion? Earth, this planet that we're on. You know, all religious history has taken place here. All the sacred texts have happened on Earth. But is Earth itself central to religious belief?
First of all, I'd say all our religion has happened here. All Earth people religion has happened here.
Yeah.
Aliens exist.
That's true.
Ooh, we're getting into
obviously,
it.
But
Rich Shao, that's a call out.
The universe is huge. It is obscene to think that we are the only life and that God created the whole universe so that we could see out to places we'll never explore. No, there's other life.
Yeah.
I agree.
Aren't there like spiritually?
I also think we haven't come in contact with it, so
Yeah. The whole UFO thing, calm down.
yeah, calm down. It's the government.
Area 51 is just like creating weapons. Calm
Yeah,
down.
they're
They're just trying to create spy planes and stuff. There's another
nukes.
podcast.
It's fine.
not this one. It's a better podcast that talks about that.
Wow.
You should check it out. You should probably leave this podcast.
Unsubscribe.
Unlike unsubscribe.
Our
did
content
you guys-
him no longer being here. Sorry, Ben had to go.
Did you guys see the recent footage from I think it was military aircraft capturing UFO on their on camera displays or whatever? There's a whole thing going around about how these Navy airmen found a UFO and they were just I have no idea what this is.
Oh, well,
Here you go, I guess.
I feel like there is truth to saying there are UFOs because UFO is an acronym, means unidentified flying object. So when NASA or the military says there was a UFO, they literally mean there was something flying in the air and we don't know what it was. It could be a Russian spy plane. It could be, a China, whatever it is. Who knows? But it doesn't mean aliens, right? It doesn't. It's not like that.
Aliens. I think we have come into contact with aliens.
Really?
Yeah. Oh,
You think aliens have come to Earth?
Yeah.
Okay, well, hold on. So wait. So for aliens to have come to Earth, that means, so as far as we know, the closest Earth-like planet, unless there's something crazy like their Mercury life forms or something, they would have to have discovered how to fold space-time continuum. Because it would take, even if we could travel at the speed of light, which we currently think isn't really possible, but even if we could, it would take millions of years to reach the next habitable planet that we know of.
But again, that's just saying these are the facts that we know.
Yeah.
We can't say the facts that another race being alien matter has discovered. They're just under a whole different set of laws than we are.
Yeah. So you think
who knows?
Yeah, I guess chances are that there's aliens who have way more advanced technology than we do.
And I just think
Do you think we're being watched?
I think aliens have probably observed us. But I think our government knows more about them. I feel like a conspiracy with this.
Yeah, Luke's probably the most
Let's
conspiracy
get Alex
theorist
Jones on here, baby.
I feel like us just assuming aliens are way more technologically advanced than us might be totally missing how different our cultures could be. Maybe they haven't even, maybe technology isn't even really a thing that they explore. Maybe they're maybe they have much more developed philosophy than us.
Yeah.
Maybe they have
They just think
much
way harder.
Yeah, they may, there could be all sorts of different areas, but we're always we have this equation of better means more technology. And I think that is a very flawed consumerist mindset.
Did you just think of flawed as FLOD?
I didn't, but now I will.
I think the main reason that we have that conclusion is because the only way for aliens to interact with us is to be some sort of increase in technology or some sort of shift where we could communicate. So we just have to make that jump first and then be oh, what's their culture?
That's true.
Yeah.
Now I want to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is Richard.
Wow.
You just came back from South Africa from like 3 months. I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, so Sonia and I went to South Africa as part of my practicum, which is a fancy word for...
Vacation.
Nope. For training in the ministry as part of my schooling. So for 10 weeks, I was in a new church congregation in South Africa, right outside of Durban. I also traveled up to Johannesburg, and also spent 5 days in Kruger National Park, which was dope.
Vacation.
Well, that little part was a vacation.
Oh, okay, so it was all vacation.
Yeah. So that's fair. Plug in Kruger National Park. They're our sponsor. We're not sponsored. But overall, it was an awesome experience.
What was like the best and worst time? Without like name dropping people or like...
There was this one guy. Oh, no.
The guy who hosted us.
Any minute spent.
Take that, Joel.
Shout out to Joel. He's our boy.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me, Joel.
Yeah, so what was like the best and worst experience?
Best experience was... Most fun experience was probably Kruger National Park. It was...
Well, I mean, from like
amazing.
Like being in a more pastoral sense.
Have you said what the national park is?
What?
I mean, like, have you said it's a safari, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 People hear national park,
is
they'll think like, oh, cool, he went to African Yellowstone or something.
No, it's a safari.
Yeah.
Saw all them African animals. It was fun. But the most kind of rewarding experience, I would say, was probably when I preached a joint service in a congregation called Claremont down in South Africa. And Claremont is it's a Zulu service, a Zulu new church. And so there were 3 of us that were up on chancel, 3 ministers in the service. It's the first time I've ever done a service with other ministers.
That's interesting. How'd that work?
So their head pastor led all of the like order of service, kept the service moving.
Were you just like the hype man? Like, yeah.
Preach.
Was it
Jesus?
Was it in English and Zulu, or was it?
So the whole service was in Zulu except for the children's talk and then the sermon. Another minister, Joel, who shout out to Joel again, did the children's talk, and then I did the sermon, and those are both in English because the congregation speaks both English and Zulu, but Zulu is most of their first languages. So it was just awesome to attend a Zulu service, and just that. My favorite part of that was definitely the singing. Zulu singing was awesome, and
People just super hype about it?
yeah, like the congregation that I served in mostly got generally around 100 people a service.
Wow.
And this service the Sunday I was there, I think got probably around 20, 25. And the singing was easily twice as loud. Because everyone just sings full voice, and they had no accompaniment. And a lot of the songs were like, a member of the congregation would start to sing a solo part, and then everyone would sing like back up harmonies behind them.
That's cool.
And it was sort of like a lot of the songs were kind of call and response type vocals, and it was just a very different feel of music, very different harmony style than European based music, and it was beautiful and just it was
That's sweet.
Really, really powerful.
So does anything stand out to you then as on the flip side of that? So sort of the lowest point, or the hardest thing, the worst thing?
Definitely the hardest thing was just, and I think everyone currently living in South Africa would agree with me, just kind of the state of their country and government right now. It is really in a rough place. And it was shocking and hard to see how much extreme poverty there is right alongside kind of affluence. And it was really like driving from the airport to
Like when you first got there?
Yeah, driving from the airport to where we were staying, we passed a bunch of what they call townships, which are slums, and like, you know, corrugated steel
Right.
shacks and stuff
Hard-
like that.
hard
And
to
it's
see.
just really, it's really tough to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was,
Just a significant contrast to what you're used to.
yeah, and it's easy to, being like a middle class white American, just pretend like that kind of thing doesn't really exist, like emotionally.
Yeah.
Like intellectually, I'm like, yeah, there are people who are in extreme poverty, but like that emotional pull was really significant and really has me thinking about, you know, the morality of spending and how I choose to live my life
Right.
and spend my money, and a bunch of stuff that I just need time to think about how to
Yeah, reconcile it all.
reconcile all that.
Because it's hard when, you know, people who live in those corrugated steel places that you were driving past would look at our lives now and be like, they have so much, they're so affluent, but we don't always have that perspective. So like us living our lives, we're like, man, I don't have enough. Like I don't feel secure. Like I'm not doing that well, or, you know, our middle class sort of.
Yeah, and
Struggles.
it's tough because on the one hand, I do sort of feel like every time I go by Starbucks, I am
Contributing to the make.
ignoring the extreme situation that other people are in. But at the same time, I think that part of me feels like it's legitimate to strive for a certain quality of life. I think it is fair to say, like, I will do what I need to maintain a certain quality of life, whatever,
For you and your family.
for me and my family, and then with anything that is excess to that, I will try to help the world. But then the problem with that is that I think just with higher income, generally quality of life just kind of fills to meet the budget, you know, and suddenly...
Well, I mean, there are lots of studies that are like, once you have a certain income level, your happiness isn't going to be better necessarily the more you get. Like once you meet a certain threshold, like you might be spending more and your life expenses might go up because you're making more, but you're not necessarily going to be happier.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like if I was making $5,000 more a year, I wouldn't notice. You know, like suddenly my life expenses would just improve and I would still be like, okay, we're able to save this much, we have to spend this much, we have to budget this much. And it's like, I mean, if I didn't decide to celebrate this, that, or the other thing by buying a fancy steak and instead bought like some chicken thighs, well, that money could be feeding people that are dying right now.
Yeah.
And just, it's a weird...
That's a big issue to wrestle with. Do you feel
like the good kind of discomfort, like the useful kind of discomfort, I think.
I was going to ask you how your experiences have changed you coming back, and it seems like this is sort of the answer, like thinking about these bigger things more.
One of the things that I have realized, and one of the reasons I liked that joint service so much, was because I think my biggest struggle with preaching is feelings of self-importance. Because it's so easy when you have 100 people sitting there waiting to hear what you have prepared to start to be like,
And
oh,
change
man,
their lives
yeah.
because of it.
Just to start to lose that humility. And really, I think for me, preaching is definitely the hardest form of public speaking I've ever done, because not only am I presenting something, but I'm also trying to worship at the same time. Like I want to be in a place where my preaching is worship for me. And that takes me removing myself from it in terms of kind of like ego attachment. And every other kind of public speaking or performance that I've ever done has a lot of ego attachment. You know, you're in a play and afterward everyone comes and it's like, oh my gosh, you were so great. And you're like, I know, I was pretty great. Like,
But I also think the best acting comes from when you can leave ego at the door.
yeah,
So,
but that's
similar to preaching.
And so, like, after the service, basically wherever you are, people are going to come and be like, oh man, I really liked your sermon, because it's just polite. Whether they liked it or not, it's polite. And I often feel like, I'm working so hard to not feel attached to this message in my own ego, and feel like, isn't it so cool that the Word has this message for us, not that I have this message for you. And when you're like, I really loved your sermon, I'm like, please.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to you talking about sort of the pride in self coming from like a service and that kind of thing. And just something that I found useful for myself, like just being involved in the arts and people complimenting you for your performance or what you were able to give to people in your sermon. I always like to visualize, for me, it helps to visualize God kind of packing up a nice little gift, wrapping it for you, and giving it to you, and be like, you give that away to people. You give that away. And I'm like, oh, thanks. That's kind of cool. And I'm like, cool. There you go. And that way you can be like, it's through me, not of me, sort of.
Yeah.
And I like looking at it like that because it's sort of like a little personal moment with God and just helps me connect to the Lord rather than just seeing myself as like not involved, being like, oh, you're God's messenger for this performance or for this gift to people.
I don't
it's just something that's helped me.
I don't try. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to put it. I don't try to see myself as not involved, but I try to make my ego not involved.
Yeah.
You know, I try to be involved in the worship, not involved in a presentation.
Yeah. I think what like made me think of that was because you said, oh, isn't this cool that the Word gave us this? Just because it's sometimes hard for me to connect to the Word emotionally in the same way as like visualizing God as like a divine human being sort of deal. Being like, it's yeah, so for me it's hard to connect to like the truths of the Word coming through me rather than like God putting a nice little gift in my hands and having me
Interesting.
give that to people.
Interesting. I get that. I think at this point for me, when I use the phrase "the Word," I imagine God speaking, and I feel like it's very closely tied for me at this point. So definitely when I say the word, I am picturing God delivering a message. But yeah, I can see how if you just say like the Word, it's very easy to be like a book with some stuff written in it, very heady, very intellectual, kind of hard to understand sometimes. Where's God in that? One of my favorite things that New Church Westville, which is the congregation that I was at most of the time, is doing right now is a Bible study program. And it's super simple. They just read a chapter of the Bible, and they do it once a month. And
do they all read the chapter together in the same room, or do they like, is that the homework?
They theoretically do it beforehand and then go through it just verse by verse there. Sure. And like whatever comes up for you comes up. And it's kind of embarrassing to say that. So the thing is like an hour and 15 minutes long. And I was like, a single chapter, an hour and 15 minutes. How are we going to talk for over an hour about Mark 11?
Yeah.
And I like read Mark 11 and I was like, yeah, it's Mark 11. Like, I don't know. Is anyone going to have anything to say about this? And then there's like, oh shoot, we gotta wrap it up. Sorry. Like, I know we're having a great conversation here, but like we're at our time. And I was just like, oh yeah, it's like what God said. So there's a lot to talk about there. Yeah. You know, I should know this in my career. And then like I led the next one, which is Mark 12. And I was like, oh man, the last one was so cool. I read Mark 12 and I was like, man, people aren't going to have anything to say about this. Like, how are we going to talk for over an hour about this? And then I got there and we talked for a while and I was like, oh shoot, we're running out of time. And I was like, man, same thing. Because I think I have a problem where I definitely am like, oh yes, I know this story, so I can move on. And I don't like really engage with it again because I'm like, oh, it's already in my brain. I don't need to read it again. It's really stupid.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing. Like telling ourselves that, oh, I already fixed this thing about myself, I don't need to revisit it.
Yeah.
And like, nah, you probably do on a cyclical sort of deal.
Yeah.
I'm interested about going back to the ego thing though, because there's definitely the flip side too, where there's lots of people, or it probably happens to people simultaneously, is you have the I'm not good enough to do this, like sort of the anxiety, the worry, and then you do it, and then maybe you get a lot of compliments and you're like, I'm more than good enough to do this. And so like in the same like 2-hour time frame, you can like not believe in yourself, which is a problem, right? Like the Lord would say, of course you are, go and do it. It's not about you, right? It's selfish to think you're not good enough, and it's selfish to think that you're awesome and more than good enough to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's
So it's like
that's
people
cool.
struggle with both of those, I think.
Yeah, I really more and
That's a
more
good point.
see, as someone who self-deprecates fairly consistently, I am realizing more and more how selfish self-deprecation is,
Yeah.
and how it's like guised selflessness.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm garbage. When really it's just like I'm still focused on myself.
Right.
Whether I'm putting myself up or putting myself down, I'm focused on me. Mm-hmm. And
or even saying that to get people to
affirm me.
you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's definitely like, and not to say that it's not like a valid struggle to have, but I think people can make self-deprecation a good thing.
Well, I think there are times for that when you're actually in a vulnerable space and talking to someone who you want like genuine feedback from or genuine help from.
Well, I think there's a difference between self-reflection and self-deprecation. I think it's healthy to recognize problem areas in your life. I don't think it is good to ever make yourself worthless for it. And I think self-deprecation is like, I am bad, I am worthless for this reason.
So what are you saying the uses of self-deprecation are?
I'm saying there aren't. I'm saying
Oh,
it's
sorry,
selfish.
I misunderstood
Yeah.
you then.
So there's
Yeah.
uses of self-reflection, recognizing problem areas where you need to improve.
Yeah.
But I often am like, here's a problem area, I am bad. Not like, here's a problem area, how can I improve it?
And it's interesting to think of, I think society in general looks at arrogance as, like we all know arrogance is bad. And we all think like that arrogant person isn't doing what he should. He should be giving gifts to people through however he is useful, right? You're not being useful you're just being arrogant. But then society doesn't tend to look at people who are really shy and unsure of themselves as like, you're being selfish. You're not, because it's a sad problem that a lot of us deal with.
Yeah.
But at the core of it too, I think that you have to do a little bit of self-reflection and say, okay, but am I letting myself sit in that because it's comfortable, right? For arrogant people, if they're just always, it's that person, it's probably comfortable for them to sit in that arrogance because they want to puff themselves up, right?
Yeah, and often that
but it's
arrogance
comfortable
comes
to
from a
sit.
place, I think both come from insecurity.
Yeah.
And I think we can look at arrogant people and demonize them as like, oh, he
Yeah.
thinks he's all that. She thinks she's all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then look at people that are self-deprecating and be like, oh my gosh, I just need to find a way to help them.
Yeah.
Help them realize how worth it they are, how much
Yeah.
value they have. And that's great, but those arrogant people probably also feel empty and worthless inside, and that's
Yeah.
why they're guising it.
And you also
with-
should try to help them with different methods, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
anytime someone's struggling with any sort of character defect, there's a way to go about helping them. But we see aggressive tendencies. Like we've had this conversation this year a lot, like with anger, and we see anger, and we're like, that's bad. But what about the person who's too scared to help someone who's, like if you're too scared and you see someone getting robbed or mugged or at gunpoint, and you could totally stop it, like in a safe way, but you're too scared and that person gets hurt because of it. That's bad too. And like there's almost less blame in some ways, but at the same time, not really. You have to step up and find out what in you needs to be improved and start taking steps to improve it. Whether you're, not trying to help people enough or whether you're a jerk.
Yeah, I think one thing going kind of off of that, I think one thing that I have ingrained in me is like, yelling is bad means I'm a mean person. Wow. That's okay.
I'm just losing my composure because somehow my watch heard Siri and was listening to there was a whole paragraph of everything we had been saying.
Really?
And then I guess I said, you need to stop being a jerk. And then my watch just said, that's not nice.
Is reprimanded?
Don't.
Oh, okay. There we go.
But I think culturally we see like anger and outbursts of anger as like, how dare they do that? They can't even control themselves. Like, and very much like demonize an angry person. And then a person who is sad, we're like, oh my gosh, we need to help them.
Yeah.
And really we should have that, oh my gosh, I need to help them for both those cases.
Yeah.
Because someone who struggles with anger is someone who struggles.
Yeah.
Right? But because it feels like we have to be more defensive against it, because we feel attacked, we often find ourselves not able to be in a position to actually be open to helping.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting...
I actually had a recent conversation about sort of someone being directly selfish and indirectly selfish. And I think it's the same with like anger and meekness. Like we see anger has a very direct effect on whoever the recipient of that is. And meekness has a very indirect effect. And so we treat those differently because of the sort of methods that we see. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be compassionate toward the angry person. Or maybe the person who's a little meek needs a kick sometimes, like not a physical kick, but like a zealous kick, you know? Just trying different methods.
Yeah, and I think the answer is not to take an angry person by the shoulders and say, stop being angry. And you also don't take someone who's suffering with depression, you don't shake them by the shoulders and say, stop being sad.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's
Just
it's
choose
delicate,
not to.
but it's interesting that both of those things, being very sad or actually depression, which is not just being sad, versus anger, both of those can be helped with therapy. But we see one as you're a bad person because you suffer from anger, and some people actually suffer from anger management and they don't know how to handle that, and it's bottled up, and then it comes out and they can't control it. And someone with depression, sometimes they just cannot control how they feel, and so it totally debilitates them. Both of those are things that people can seek help for in therapy. So it's interesting, just thinking about how we can help people. And we tend to write off certain people. Like if someone's always sad all the time, we're like, oh, they're a total downer, and we write them off. If someone's always angry, we write them off. Like that person's just a jerk, rather than how can I help that person?
Right.
Yeah, and interesting with the whole... I think that culture has come a long way with accepting therapy as something that people need and having it not be a shameful thing.
Something that all people need.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yep, which I think
Everyone
is
has
really,
baggage.
really useful. And I also, and maybe this isn't true, but I feel like if someone was like, yeah, I'm getting therapy because I struggle with anxiety or depression or whatever, people will be like, oh my gosh, like it's so good that you're like reaching out and trying to get
Seeking
help and helping, working to better yourself and fix and address these problems. If someone's like, yeah, I'm getting therapy for anger management, I can't control my rage, people are like, oh, phew.
Yeah, like calm down.
Like, yeah, good. Like, fix that. Like, oof.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, it's still like a person being vulnerable with a problem they have. Like, it's still someone seeking to address problem areas in their life and seek to be more useful.
Yeah.
And
They have a bad
functional
habit,
people.
and they're getting tools to deal with it. I mean, that's honorable.
Yeah.
So.
But I think there's a lot of weird stigma around anger, even though it's still like a weakness and a vulnerability for people.
Yeah. And this, oh man, just bringing up the stigma of mental health. It's like, you should go to the doctor, you should go to the dentist, and you should see a therapist, right? But that third one, people are like, oh. You know, like, if you hear someone's going to, like, marriage counseling, like, oh, their marriage sucks.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, wow. You know, it's like, well, how about you just look at it like, like, if you say, like, oh, yeah, I need to go to the dentist. He must not brush his teeth. No one says that. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go get, go to my GP. Like, he doesn't actually, he probably has diabetes or something. You know, it's like, no one does that.
What's the use in that too?
Yeah.
I don't want to tangent away too much. I feel like we're bouncing.
I feel like that could be a whole podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe it should, like,
but
mental health.
I want to go back to like ego in preaching, because I feel like that's a really cool thing that I don't think we've talked about before. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about, because like I used to see ministers as these perfect, things, these paladins of God that had no faults or whatever. So it's interesting hearing about the kind of tribulations and pitfalls that ministers can go through. And it's also When you were saying about the realm of selfishness of ministers, like, oh, it's selfish to be really self-deprecating, be like, oh, I'm worthless, I can't do this sermon, I got nothing, and then all the way to the other end of like, oh no, I'm great, this is all me. It's so similar to like a lot of experiences I've had in the artistic like acting world. Yeah. Like I'll have the same thing where I'll go into an audition, be like walk in and be like, oh man, my heart's thudding. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be bad. Like I'm just not gonna do a great job. And then I'll do it, and then I'll walk out and be like, I killed that. Yeah, it's not a big deal. And so it's hard to find that middle zone. But also like in the times that I do find that middle zone of where I can walk into an audition and be like, yeah, if it goes well, great. If it doesn't, it is what it is. Like, I'm not nervous about it. It is what it is. Yeah. Then I walk out feeling like, could have gone well, could have gone terribly. I don't really, it's fine either way. Yeah. Those are the times when I have the best auditions, when I do my best work, when I can leave that ego behind and just be fully, and I guess more purely in for the art form, or like more purely in it for the message, and leaving yourself behind, is I assume would be the best kind of sermons, when like you're just like, I'm a messenger right now. I'm going to leave myself behind and just be fully in it for what God wants to bring to the table.
Yeah, and I feel really grateful for the way that the new church views the ministry, at least the way I understand it. From my reading, I think a lot of religion, especially historically, has kind of glorified the ministry and made them like perfect paragons of God. Sort of way. And I think that is really unhealthy organizationally and really unhealthy for those ministers' personal lives. Like to have everyone constantly being like, you're a saint, you're better than us, we can never be as good as you. Like, can you imagine trying to struggle with that? And I think that the culture I see from where I have been is more like I have devoted my life to be an expert in this topic. Like I am training to be an expert on the word. Right. That doesn't mean that I am living it better than other people. Right. That doesn't mean I am morally superior to anyone. It's a knowledge base. Right. And the knowledge base is required to perform the job, but that doesn't relate to my personal life. Mm-hmm. And there's a story of and I'm sure this has happened more than just once, but a Christian minister whose son was a teenager and stopped going to church, and he had to lie to his congregation and tell them that his son was attending a different service of the same denomination because he was afraid he would lose his job.
Wow.
If he wasn't the
perfect parent, or had the perfect family.
Paragon of Christian family values. And while I think that it's important that as a minister you are someone that people can respect, I think that's true for any leadership.
Yeah.
You know, like
or any person, really.
Yeah. But just in terms of jobs that involve leadership, you know, if I don't respect the person leading my business, it's going to be harder for me to work for them. And I think there is an extra layer in the ministry because you're trying to instruct people on spiritual health. Mm-hmm. And if you are actively spiritually unhealthy and publicly spiritually unhealthy, that it can feel hypocritical to the people receiving it. Mm-hmm. But like,
I think I just feel like we have to lower our standards a little bit all around, though, just because like if ministers are trying to live up to this unrealistic ideal of what they think they should be, it's going to overtake more of the use of their job than they could be having. And it's the same for people in the congregation, like lowering their expectations of the perfection that a minister should be, so that they have more room to just be people and be experts in their field.
Yeah.
And live their use in that kind of way.
And I think the expectations on a leader bleed down into the expectations of the group as a whole. So if a minister feels like, when I am at church on Sunday, I have to make sure to be the perfect paragon of Christian value, then all of their congregation is like, oh, church is not a place where I can be vulnerable. Church is not a place where I can express pain. Church is not a place where I can express struggle. It's a place where I have to show everyone that I am a perfect Christian, or I'm a perfect of whatever faith I am.
So what's that balance then? So like, can a minister, how vulnerable can a minister be while giving a sermon? Like, what's the appropriate level of being real with the congregation? Like,
Yeah,
can
it's
a
a
minister
really,
talk about his marital struggles? Ooh, I don't know about.
I think that depends. I think it depends on what those marital struggles are. I don't think a minister should be like, I was cheating on my wife,
Yeah.
and I realized it was bad. People are like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like I don't want him to be my minister.
Right.
Yeah, self-disclosure in any job. I mean, in the ministry, it seems obviously. I mean, public speaking. There's a time and a place for anything, right? If you're in a professional setting, right, and if you're preaching, you're in a professional setting, right? You're expecting people to silence their cell phones. You're expecting people to not have side conversations during the service.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like if you're in a board meeting at a company and you're on a conference call, you don't just start talking about personal matters. No, we're here to do a thing, right? And that's, I'm going to tell you about a story in the Word, and I think it can help your lives. And there's a certain level of self-disclosure that can probably help that, and a certain level that's just going to completely distract the entire message, right? And so you don't want to destroy the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go
so
too
instead
far.
of like this sermon was about like how to address dysfunction in marriage, suddenly this sermon was about Reverend whoever talking about the time he yelled at his wife.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah,
that's not useful.
There's a balance there, because like we're talking about ego being involved in the ministry and how to find that balance properly. Because I think a minister could use their personal life as a frame of reference for the message that they're giving, but leading it that way instead of just talking about their life because it's them being involved. You know, so like realizing that they have maybe it's just a more external view of looking at it, being like, okay, this minister has, or if I'm a minister, I have this whole life that I can choose lessons I've learned from in useful ways. And if that supplements what the message for the week, that's great. That's a great way to like connect personally with the people.
Yeah.
But looking at it that way more than like, oh, how can I talk about myself? You know?
Yeah, and I also think the message you choose needs to be one that people relate to and helps them feel connected to the message and helps them feel reflective on their own life. Mm-hmm. And so if you're just like, this thing happened to me, and people are like, that's kind of a weird out there thing. None of us have experienced that. That's just a you thing. That's a bad example. That's bad personal sharing.
Yeah.
One of the sermons that I liked most that I preached was on kind of gratitude toward the Lord and how we praise Him. And I talked about how struggles that make it hard to remember to praise and feel gratitude toward the Lord. And one of them was kind of the idea that consistent blessings become expectations. Consistent gifts become what you deserve. And I was talking about my personal struggle with whenever there is information that I cannot easily access via my phone and the internet. So like I hear the end of a song and just the instrumental, like just the last few guitar chords, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know that song. What is that song? And I pull out my phone to try to find what it is. I'm like, what do I search? Like I don't have any lyrics to search. Song's over. I can't Shazam it. And I'm so frustrated because I'm like, I want to know this and I cannot know it.
And I should be able to.
I should be able to know this.
Yeah.
And how often?
What's that song that goes do 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 do?
Yeah.
Hey, Alexa.
And how often do I find the information I want and go, oh my gosh, it's so awesome that I can do this.
Yeah.
What an amazing tool in my life. I'm so grateful that I can
internet.
do this.
Thank you, Al Gore.
Well, and that
Get out.
well, that does tie back to your experiences in Africa and seeing such a disparity in lifestyle, and just realizing how much we take for granted where we are, and everyone takes for granted the life that they have, because it's just that repeated pattern of like, oh, this is what it is, so I have this expectation, because that's how human beings work. We create these expectations based off our history, off repeated patterns.
I actually ran into that while I was preaching this sermon. One of the examples I used was I said, You know, how often do we walk into a room and when we flip the light switch on and it turns on, we're like, oh my goodness, thank you, God, for electricity. But while I was delivering it, I remembered that South Africa suffers from rolling blackouts.
Did you switch it up? Or how did
So I was like, if you walk into a room and you flip a light switch on and it comes on, and then I saw people in the congregation kind of snicker, and then I was like, if it comes on, and then people kind of laughed, and I was like, whew, saved it.
That's a good reminder for us, though. Like, people are living, like, my lights work every time, right? Oh, maybe the light bulb went out, but I can just drive to the store. Like,
in your car?
yeah, in my car. You know, it's like being grateful. That sounds like a really good reminder for you. Like, some people live, first of all, without electricity, or if they have electricity, sometimes it doesn't work because of bad things happening.
Yeah, it was strange preaching in another country where, like, I kind of got more accustomed toward the end, but just like I'd go in and I'd look at a crowd of faces I don't know who live in a country I'm not familiar with, who knows what quality of life they're living. Like, how do I give any sort of personal example? Like, it's so hard when I just have no idea what these people are experiencing.
Right.
And for the most part, it's fairly similar to me, but there is that fear of like, am I going to say something people are going to be like, what? Like, we don't deal with that. Or like, oh, I wish that was a problem we had, and like make myself look like an idiot up there. And again, it shouldn't be about me.
Look, you're getting into it right now.
But also like deliver something that's supposed to connect people to the message that instead distances them.
Anyway, my boys, we should wind down here.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
I think it was a super, super useful process, and it is really nice to feel like I'm returning to a more comfortable place to kind of rest and regroup and kind of analyze what I got out of it and kind of move forward. But it was interesting. We were there for long enough that as we were leaving, you know how on a lot of planes they have a little screen that you can track your flight path and random facts. And so there was a thing that showed the time of day across her whole flight path. And she pointed, Sonia, my wife, pointed to Westville in South Africa and was like, oh, Richard, look, it's noon back home. And I was like, oh, wait. I was like, oh, where's home? Ah!
3 months is like just long enough to like,
Just long enough
Well, you
to
also
start
haven't been
feeling...
married and like together in one place for long before you shipped out. So.
Yep, we currently have lived together as a married couple, or lived together in general, because we didn't live together before we got married, but lived together more in South Africa with Joel Glenn than we have alone in our own apartment. It was funny. One time we were discussing that and realizing it, and Sonia jokingly was like, Joel, you're kind of like our child.
He's older than you.
We all laughed about it, and then I was like, why our child? Why not like our dad? He's older than us. And then all three of us were like, no, child. Yep. It was great. Because he was really busy, so he often like cooked, and then he would eat with us what we cooked. And so it's very much like, Joel's home, we made dinner for you. And he was like, ooh.
How was your day, honey?
Yeah, it was really, it was a great time.
Nice. Well, we're definitely glad to have you back for the show and personally.
Yeah.
Glad to have you around. Yeah. Also, Richard and I were both growing our hair out while he was on his hiatus, and
we still are, baby.
I am not.
I hate seeing it. That really bothers me.
Yeah, I hate when
the rest of us do too.
Heyo.
That's good. Solid
Dunk.
Solid slam.
Oh. I got you.
I had to do the double tap.
Shout out to people who comment. I'd love to know your experience with church and ministerial, pastoral styles and what's worked well for you and what hasn't. I'm just super curious because I know what works for me. I know it works for some of my like contemporary friends and stuff, but
Also,
I'd love to hear what works for other people.
Yeah, what do you like to see in church?
Yeah, I'd love to hear if you go to church regularly, why do you go? What message do you go for? What feeling do you go for? If you don't go to church, why don't you go to church? If you're a religious person and you don't go to church, what makes it feel not worth it? Because if you're not going, it's because it doesn't feel worth it to you. So
Yeah.
why? Yeah.
We try to respond to all the comments also, because we don't have a lot of comments, so we just respond to all of them.
So
All
if you
4 of us
comment,
will all
we
respond.
will say
Said
something
that
back to
enough
you.
times. They know. Anyway, thank you for watching and or listening to the Spiritable podcast. Remember, if you're just listening to the audio, go check out the video for fun goofs and gags. Check out our Instagram. That's also where the most fun goofs and gags are.
That's very
Hit us up on social media under the Grand Human Project. Find the Spiritable podcast wherever you find podcasts. Smash like and subscribe. Keep living your best life.
I will say, I am super not used to this double camera thing.
Oh, yeah.
That you guys look past me when you're addressing the audience. I want to be like, hey, audience, but you guys are there too.
And you're going to be out of focus if you do that. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Give us a comment, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Have a great day. We'll see you next time the show is over. You're the worst. You're fired.
I think it's better that way.
Thanks for tuning in.
No,
We'll see you next week.
I literally just ended it.